I spoke to Minister Earl DeVoe, and that was in connection with the impact of Hurricane Irene on the island of New Providence, and more particularly as evidenced by me as I did a constituency tour, because we know what has happened in the other islands, but everything is relative, and there are people on the island of New Providence that have had significant impacts, either because they had a deteriorated housing situation or some tree fell on the house. And he gave me every indication that the government was doing its best to give private contractors the contracts to go out and bring us relief as quickly as possible. Having said that, disaster preparedness in the Bahamas is one of the more significant priorities that the country should have. We know that we have had an earthquake in our history in Inagua. We know that we have had major impact from hurricanes. And so when we ourselves as a government worked on the Disaster Preparedness Act and the legislation, it was then a signal to the country that disaster preparedness is really that because of the geophysical nature of our country, island nation, that we must work assiduously to put in place protections on a continuing basis. And so whether they're sea walls, or whether they are sort of building controls, it is very, very critical that we do not have a political division on what the country ought to be doing to protect itself in times of disaster. There ought to be oneness. Now, you would note in this case, government ministers have gone out individually or together, and Progressive Liberal Party members of Parliament have gone out, and that in itself is not a good thing, because then you're having these separate perspectives of people who went to the same island looking at the same disaster. And there should be a oneness when it comes to disaster and the action we take. And so really, again, I thought that we had established a culture where when these things happened, everyone pulled together, worked together to make this thing right. We have to, therefore, I think as a country come to understand the importance of there being no politics in this. Secondly, whenever there is a catastrophic development, it is important, I think, that the representative of the area, in this case, Mr. Davis for Cat Island, Rumkins, and Salvador, in this case, Acklands and Crooked Island, Macau's representative, Mr. Alfred Gray, that they be a part of the first response, because they are actually elected representatives who on a continuing basis must be present. And one would have thought again that it would have been automatic for them to be invited to be able to participate in what was happening on the ground down there and to be a witness to it, so there is minimal political division. With respect to my visit to Acklands, I think there are two ways of looking at it. One, the commercial impact. Looking at the premises that were destroyed, rental premises, bonefish lodges, and really effectively destroyed, shops where people would not be able to, the day after the hurricane, resume their business. That is devastation, because it interrupts the supply of income and their capacity to earn a living. And so you found, therefore, that when we went into Spring Point, for example, and we saw the premises of Larry McKinney, where the rental accommodation was completely destroyed. The store was completely washed away in the sense of all of the supplies in it and impacted by the hurricane. So we saw that. We went to Club Rolex. This is an investment on the part of Henry Roll, where 4 or 5 years ago, one of the hurricanes destroyed it. He built it back. And when we got there and we saw it destroyed again, and he had written on it, Irene was here. And he said he's despairing. Why should I invest in this again? Why should I put my money out because I'm not going to get a return? So clearly, governments must give advice to people who are making an investment, an investment that employs people. I danced in that club. People served me in that club, and it is no more. And so the point is, from a commercial point of view, one of the huge, I think, very major bonefish lodges, beautiful lodge sitting up on a hill up there that is in Pinefield. Again, it's called Grace Point. And it's owned by Newton Williamson, and again destroyed. So from a commercial point of view, you've had devastation there because it's going to take some time for people to resume their business. It's just not a home. From the personal point of view and the people of the homes, we saw senior citizens who were very, very, very concerned about their future and how they were impacted. And in one case, there's a local government officer, a chap by the name of Mario, living in. And here is the case. Mario Virgil spent the day moving around, getting people into shelters. And the hurricane came and totally destroyed his house. His house is a rooftop sitting on rubble, completely destroyed. But his acts of charity and volunteerism were so great. And then to see in his face, right? Now, if he has a job, and the criteria is people who have a job cannot get government assistance, well, that would be wrong. Because, again, he needs the intervention of the government. You take years and years and years of sacrifice to build a home. It's destroyed in 24 hours or destroyed in a few hours, and then you're left without. So the government has to come up with a program very quickly, a clear, decisive program that is intended to bring people relief as quickly as we possibly can. Now, I want to truly say that in talking to those officials there, the Bahamas truly must be grateful for the professionalism and the volunteerism of people who live in these islands and who are civil servants and public officers, to see the way in which they have responded to this disaster on behalf of people. And I've always said the indomitable spirit of the Bahamas always comes out. People are knocked down, but they get right back up. And my overriding impression is that though people have been knocked down, that we saw them all getting back up, all with a determination that they have to make it work. And so I want to be able to say to the government of the Bahamas that, listen, the opposition is here to observe and to make a contribution to what we think ought to happen. We know it is the responsibility of the government to do these things, and we are therefore urging the government, all right, to ensure that it takes decisive action very quickly to bring relief, not just carrying water to people or that, but getting people to understand and have confidence that hope and help are on the way for them, and to get them to believe that, because we have been out there. Mr. Davis has had a team in Rumkey, Cat Island, and San Salvador. The MP has had a team of us who were in Acklands. He was in Crooked Island and Long Key. So we've done that, and we're now going into the other islands that were not dealt with as badly. And so the two things I want to leave with those of you of the press, that disaster preparedness is a continuing exercise on the part of the government, and there ought to be no separation between the opposition party and the governing party, particularly if there's a change during elections. We must continue to build on what was left in place when it comes to these protecting our country against that. Now, my final point is we have to do more than pass legislation. I think this is a period, given how we've seen the impact of Irene, given the intensity of it and its impact in the United States of America that we are witnessing. We must know that there's only a matter of time before a major event a major disaster impacts an island like New Providence, impacts other islands in our Commonwealth in the way that Irene has, the way that Francis did, Jean did. So we therefore must ensure that from a policy point of view, we put in place all of the policies that would keep our country building on protecting ourselves. I see the president of the Chamber of Commerce said if there was a direct hit on Nassau, it would have been many, many millions of dollars worth of damage. That is true. And so since we know that there's a potential for that, there are so many things we can do to protect ourselves for such an eventuality. We made a decision in Salina Point, Acklands, when a plan was built for a new school. We said we would make that school into a hurricane shelter. We made the same decision when the Chinese agreed to build a national stadium for us. We asked them, we delayed it by 6 months to a year to ensure that they put in place a hurricane shelter in there so at least people in the immediate vicinity, right, in the event of a major hit on New Providence, would be able to go to shelter that would withstand it. In the case of Salina Point, they said $3 million for the school was too much, even though it was going to be a hurricane shelter for over 100 people who live in Salina Point. And it never happened. And so we want to be able to say again that the country ought not to divide when we are doing things that will strengthen our capacity to withstand disaster in years to come. The FNM, the PLP, we are obliged to be Bahamians in the face of disaster. We are obliged. There should be no difference between Hubert Ingram and Perry Christie, no difference between our parties, no difference. We must approach this together in a way that people that have confidence that when it comes to their future, we are one. Thank you very much.